You're tuned in to the Andrew Lawton Show.
Well, we know that since Justin Trudeau was elected, gun owners have been a group that the Liberals feel they can go after with impunity. And there are a lot of things that play into this that we've spoken about in the past. The media not understanding guns, a lot of politicians not wanting to get in and have these discussions. But for the most part, anytime I've spoken about firearms on this show, the volume of response it gets is huge. And not just from gun owners, but people that say, yeah, you know what, I guess I didn't actually know how ubiquitous gun ownership was in Canada. So it is important that people know that gun owners are here, they're a part of the country, they're not posing any problems, and hopefully get the politicians to stop picking on this group, to use a term that sounds trite, just because they feel it's politically advantageous to do so. Well, one of the big firearms groups in Canada, the Canadian Coalition for Firearm Rights, is hosting a big march on Parliament Hill, a march in Ottawa that's coming up on September 12th. It's called the Integrity March. We'll talk about what exactly they hope to achieve with this with Rod Giltaca, the CEO and Executive Director of CCFR, who joins me on the line now. Rod, good to talk to you. Thanks for coming back on the show.
Thanks for having me, Andrew.
So what's the point of this?
So the point of this is we don't seem to be getting the proper focus on this conversation. Taking guns away from millions of Canadians is a big deal. It's a big problem. So we hope to show Canadians that maybe aren't familiar with what gun owners look like, who gun owners are, which is basically your neighbors and the people in your community. We also want to bring some attention to our issue because it's very difficult to get your message out in any long format, long enough to explain what the issues are on mainstream media. And of course, they're biased against us because they're getting a paycheck from the people that want to confiscate the guns. So we're trying to get a little bit more national attention of what we're doing, and we also want to be there and accessible to mainstream Canadians.
This is something that I find to be so important, the idea of normalizing gun ownership. And for a lot of people, they were raised with guns, they know what they are, it's not a political thing for them, it's just a way of life. And then you get, similarly, even people on the quote-unquote right that grew up in cities like Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, they've never been around it, they've never been exposed to it. And when confronted with that, you have two options. You can either say, all right, I'm going to learn a bit more about this, or the alternative that I think a lot of people in the media do, dig their heels in and say, no, I don't like guns, I don't want to be around them. How do you educate people with a march? I mean, it's one thing to say, yeah, we're here, but the media could just as easily say, oh, they're just, angry and bitter and all of that stuff.
Well, what we're hoping to do is have gun owners come from across the country and hopefully more from the general area, right? So people don't have to drive for 4 days. But like I said, be accessible to media. So if the media is really curious, they can come down and they can talk to us. Mm-hmm. We're going to be there. We're going to be conducting interviews. We're going to have film crews there recording the entire event ourselves. And again, we just want to be available, and hopefully some pictures will come out, even if it's minimal media coverage. At least there'll be some footage being shown. And Canadians will see who these terrible gun owners are. They're the mechanic that works on your car, or the lawyer that prepared your will, or the doctor in ER. We're just regular Canadians. So that's we just have to do something, because the persecution against gun owners is unprecedented.
I know predicting numbers on a new event, something that has never happened before, is always difficult. So I'll ask the question in a bit of a different way here, Rod. What do you think would constitute a success for turnout?
Well, I'm not a fan of hyperbole, so I'm not going to say, we're getting 2.2 million gun owners out, because that's a total number of gun owners in the country. Well, not gun owners, but licensed gun owners. Mm-hmm. I'd like to get 1,000 people there. 1,000 people is a big crowd. And one of the other things I'd like to do is contrast that to our political adversaries. So let's say the Spin Doctors for Protection from Guns. They had their National Day of Action. There's going to be action across the country. There's like 4 people in Calgary. Even in their epicenter of Toronto, they probably had 100 people. But yet they tell us relentlessly, ad nauseum, Canadians are overwhelmingly in favor of people like me getting stepped on, my property taken, and that somehow that's going to stop gang shootings or some guy dressed up as an RCMP officer shooting our fellow citizens. It's ridiculous. So I want to contrast that. So I'd like to see at least 1,000 people there.
How do you keep hopeful? Because I think the one thing when Justin Trudeau won in 2015 and was really aggressively pursuing increased gun control and then got reelected, there were a lot of gun owners, I think probably more than any group, or at least as much as some groups, that were saying this is it, like we're done. And then after the Nova Scotia attack, when that's used as political cover to put forward a gun grab through an order in council, I mean, a march is great. I mean, you need a political change, though, do you not?
You do. The easiest way to get to turn this back is to get a conservative majority elected. But the problem is that I would say the second generation of firearm, activists, right? So back in the 90s, all of this stuff happened before, and it will all happen again. We will fight the same fights over and over and over again. So it's great to get a conservative majority. That's what's needed on a number of levels, right? Maybe even to save the economy of the country. There's a number of reasons. But as far as gun control is concerned, we need that to turn back the clock at least 3 months, right? To before this ridiculous gun ban, and maybe before Bill C-71 as well. Mm-hmm. But we're taking legal action against the government on constitutional violations. And we're hoping that maybe we don't have to fight this fight every 20, 30 years like is happening right now.
I want to ask you about the name of it, Integrity March, and the tagline of this, demanding integrity from legislators. Why is that the word that you align or associate with this cause and this march?
Well, we named it after our Integrity Tour way back, which was kind of a political stunt during the election to just draw attention to the issue. But there's no integrity in Ottawa. And I'll give you an example. This is one of the reasons why people like me, why I'm so frustrated and gun owners are frustrated, is Bill Blair tells Canadians that he is absolutely obsessed with the safety of Canadians, and he'll literally do anything to ensure that Canadians are safe. And that's an interesting thing. And if you look at an election promise that the Liberals made back in 2015, it was to spend $350 some odd million on guns and gangs, right? Trying to get these gang members off the street. Well, here we are 5 years later, and they have not even allocated that $350 million. Yet, look what's happening now. They're handing out tens of billions in every direction every day of the week, and he's willing to risk everything that's associated with a gun grab and the billions that's going to cost. So there's no integrity. He lies on a daily basis to Canadians. Canadians need to expect more, and I don't know what it's going to take for people to understand that.
What is the actual structure of the event going to be? I know it's a march, but it's a new event. We don't have previous years to look at. I know I'm going to be there covering it, but what can I expect, and what can those who attend expect?
So as most things that we do at the CCFR, we try to do them differently and better, not always achieving that, but that's the goal. So we are not holding a rally where we have a stage and people listen to speakers blabbering on for 3 hours. We just didn't want to do that. So the whole event is probably going to take an hour. We're going to meet on Parliament Hill. We have a pipe and drum band to lead us. We're going to have signs. We're going to have PPE. We're going to have everything prepared for everyone. We're going to march off the Parliament grounds down Wellington. We're going to take 2 lefts and march all the way up Spark Street to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, take 2 lefts, and then end it back at Parliament. So start to finish, probably an hour. And we're just going to have, we're doing this partially for our own reasons, which are probably not overt. But we're hoping to get a lot of coverage. We're hoping to unite gun owners, and we're hoping that Canadians will see that this is we're regular people and we don't deserve to be treated like this. We haven't done anything to deserve it.
Now, I know in the U.S. we've seen rallies and marches where people are actually armed for them, and I know we have a different system as far as what's allowed and what's not allowed here, but I just want to, because I know what the criticisms are going to be to this. This is not a show off your guns march. This is a show off who the gun owners of Canada march are.
100% absolutely no firearms at this event, right? We have a different culture here. And it's just, it's not the same at all. And you know what, I appreciate you bringing that to my attention, because even in the video that I did, even some of the commentary that I've done so far, people are like, well, no guns, right? It's like, yeah, absolutely no guns. That's not what we want here. We don't want to show Canadians how angry and potentially violent we are, because that plays directly into the stereotype that the mainstream media and the government have been pumping Canadians that don't know the difference. They've been telling them, oh, these are potentially violent people. We have to disarm them. You know, they're a detriment to the country. Nothing could be further from the truth, and we don't want to play into that stereotype. So if you're going to show up, wear what you wear at work. You know, I'll be dressed like this. You'll be dressed like that. If somebody's a nurse, wear your scrubs. If somebody's a lawyer, wear your suit. You know, just try to represent who we are as the different demographics that occur in Canada.
You mentioned PPE earlier, and I have to ask about this. I mean, at the risk of getting too off track here, we know that the government has acknowledged that protests do not spread the virus. So in that case, you're covered. But there is going to be a challenge more than you might have at another point in time of people traveling, people wanting to congregate. How are you factoring that into the planning?
So we're providing PPE for everybody. You know, the whole mask issue has gotten pretty controversial. And as everything does, right? And it seems like everything's really polarizing in our society in the last 10 years and getting worse by the day. So what we're saying to our marchers is bring a mask. We will have hand sanitizer there. We'll have 1,000 masks in case someone forgets it. It's not if you wear a mask, it's not a show of submission. It's just a show of consideration. You're just being considerate to your fellow marchers. Throw the mask on for an hour. If you want to protest with masks off after, do your own thing. But we just want to take all precautions for the safety of our community, and that's the way that we're approaching it.
What would you like to see come of this? I know earlier you mentioned having some media attention and exposure and show that this group is here. But I mean, in your ideal world, is this the kind of thing that you do year after year? Or do you think it's important to have that single flash of we're here at this point?
We won't have any guns in a year. So that's the Liberals. This is not, it's funny because some aspects of our community are like, well, they're not taking my lever action or they're not taking my pump action. And they couldn't be more wrong, because if you look at Australia, it started with handguns. Nobody cared because they didn't shoot handguns. Next were semi-autos. Well, I don't care because I don't need a gun like that. Nobody needs a gun like that. But then they came for the lever actions and the pump actions, and now then everybody's screaming blue murder. This isn't it. And the people that believe that stuff, how confident are you that the Liberals are going to stop just before they get to the guns that you own? Like what indicates at all to you that it's not going to go all the way when they have the chance? So this is, in my mind, this is a one-time event. We need this event for other reasons, for our own projects, which will, I can't give any details right now, but this is a one-time event as far as we're concerned. It's not a yearly thing, but we need it to happen, and we need people, if they're available, to come. I'm
glad you mentioned that idea of where the line stops, because I did a video a little while ago called In Defense of the AR-15, and I talked about, a lot of the issues that you and I are very familiar with, about how similar it is to other guns that are or were non-restricted, and I don't want to rehash that, but I would encourage people to look it up. But I was actually surprised and quite taken aback at an amount of negative pushback I got from gun owners who, and I'm sure you see this as well, I'm a gun owner, or I support gun ownership, but they draw a line there, and they assume that you're right, that's kind of the unanimous line that everyone will respect. And even if you are not a fan of the AR-15, to not realize that there is an incremental force against gun ownership, I think you're out to lunch, quite frankly.
You are, and that's I agree entirely, and we see that in our community, and we've done a lot of work at the CCFR to try to unite gun owners. Right, we have television shows on both outdoor networks. We sponsor commercials to let people know, hey, if you think you're going to stop, they're not going to stop. Look at everywhere else that there's been a massive gun grab. It just keeps going because they're always after the next most dangerous gun. So if they get rid of semi-autos, they're after rapid fire. Now, if you notice, Bill Blair has changed his language after the gun ban. He changed it to firearms capable of sustained rapid fire. And so it's not military style assault weapons anymore. It's capable of this. And even if you look at what the rules that came out in the gun ban anyway, they're measuring the lethality of firearms based on joules, muzzle energy. And now that took a whole bunch of hunting rifles out. Well, they can keep lowering that number, and then they can keep looking at sustained rapid fire. And next thing you know, you're facing it. And it does, the lack of support internally from our community does get old after a while, and it's very frustrating. And every time it's been brought up, I tell hunters or whoever it is, right? Somebody that shoots a break action that doesn't care about anybody else's guns. People like me that work 16 hours a day for years on end, and Tracy Wilson and all of our volunteers and organizations like the CCFR, when all of our guns are gone, I'm long gone. I'm way overdue to move on back to my career and business development as it is. And you're going to fight this by yourself. You're going to be standing there with your gun, fighting it by yourself with no resources like the CCFR. Get involved now. Stand up for your fellow Canadians. Our guns are no different than any other gun. We haven't done any more crime than anyone else has done with any other firearm. If you ask the police, the majority of hostage takings and domestic violence are old hunters with their bolt actions. But I'm not, distancing myself from them, right? So get involved, quit the nonsense, and support organizations like ours and marches like the one we're going to have in September.
Yeah, if you think the same people that want the AR-15 gone don't also want, your grandpa's single-action revolver gone, you're sorely mistaken. Well, September 12th is the rally. No, not the rally, the march, the Integrity March.
That's right.
On Parliament Hill. I have booked my flight. I'll be there, and I'm glad you're doing it, and I'm very much looking forward to it. Rod Giltaca joining me on the line, the CEO and Executive Director of the Canadian Coalition for Firearm Rights. Thank you very much to you and to your colleague, Tracy, for putting this together. And thanks, Rod, for coming out today.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks for listening to The Andrew Lawton Show. Support the program by donating to True North at www.tnc.news.